Commander Kale stood in the observation window of the frontier station and watched the humans below move through their daily routines. His tall frame reflected in the glass, pale skin and sharp features marking him as Valorian. He had been stationed here for 6 months, and every single day felt the same as the last one. The work was easy. Trade agreements, diplomatic meetings, routine patrols of empty space. Nothing challenged him anymore. The Valorian Empire stretched across thousands of star systems, and their military was the most advanced in this sector of the galaxy. Kale had trained for decades to become a commander, had studied their combat systems, and earned his rank through years of obedience and perfect execution of orders. But perfect execution of boring orders was still boring. He turned away from the window and walked through the station corridors. The human part of the station was always noisier than the Valorian quarters. Humans shouted, laughed, and moved with strange efficiency. They were small compared to Kale's people, barely reaching his chest in height. Their bodies were fragile, requiring constant environmental support. Yet somehow they had managed to spread across multiple star systems without the help of advanced genetic engineering. Kale found himself walking toward the training bay without deciding to do so. He had heard rumors about a human fighter who worked here. The rumors were unusual. A human who trained soldiers. A human who had never lost a match. The idea was almost comical. The training bay was a large, open space with padded floors and various equipment scattered around. Several humans were practicing different fighting styles when Kale entered. They stopped and looked at him. A human with red hair and a strong build approached him. Her name tag read Lauren. "Can I help you, Commander?" she asked. Her voice was direct and clear, without the usual nervousness humans showed around Valorians. "I have heard stories," Kale said, "about a human fighter. Someone who claims to never lose. I thought I would investigate this claim." Lauren's expression did not change. "That would be me. Did you want to watch some training, or did you have something else in mind?" Kale looked down at her. She was easily 2 feet shorter than him and perhaps half his mass. Her arms had muscle, but nothing compared to his own. "I want to fight you," he said. "A simple test, to see if the stories have any truth." Lauren studied him for a moment. Then she smiled, a small expression that contained no fear. "Sure, why not? Tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock. We can use the main arena. Bring whatever mindset you think you need." "I will not need much," Kale said. "I have trained since I was a child in Valorian combat systems. I have a genetic advantage in speed, strength, and reaction time. You are a Deathworld human, soft, adapted to a planet with weak gravity and abundant resources." Lauren's smile grew slightly larger. "Earth gravity is actually stronger than you might think, and the resources are not always abundant. But sure, come tomorrow morning and find out." Kale left the training bay feeling satisfied. This would be entertaining, at least. A quick victory, and perhaps this small human would understand the natural order of the galaxy. The strong dominated. The weak adapted or fell behind. Valorians had spent millennia ensuring they were always among the strong. That evening, Kale reviewed the fight in his quarters. He visualized himself moving faster than Lauren could react. He imagined her attempting to match his strength and failing completely. The image was almost too simple to visualize. It barely seemed worth his time, but anything was better than another boring patrol report. He spent the evening in the relaxation pod that maintained his body in perfect condition. The pod generated a gentle gravitational field that matched his preferred level, a temperature that let his skin absorb nutrients, and soft lighting that required no effort from his eyes. Comfort was one of the benefits of being Valorian. Kale had never understood why some species chose to live in harsh conditions, when technology could eliminate all forms of discomfort. Meanwhile, In another part of the station, Lauren sat in her quarters watching recordings of Valorian combat. The warriors were strong and fast, but they moved in predictable patterns. Their fighting style relied on overwhelming force and the assumption that superior strength would always win. They did not expect an opponent to move in unexpected directions or use their own momentum against them. Lauren thought about her childhood on Earth. She had grown up in a place where weakness could kill you. Not from other humans, though that was sometimes true, but from the environment itself. The gravity pulled harder. The sun burned hotter. Predators were faster and stronger than humans would ever be. You learned to be smart. You learned to move efficiently. You learned that strength meant nothing if you could not survive long enough to use it. She stretched her body, feeling the muscles respond. Every fiber had been built through years of training, but also through the knowledge that survival required adaptation. The human species had developed fighting techniques over thousands of years. Judo and wrestling had taught humans how to use an opponent's weight and momentum. Jiu-jitsu had shown that leverage and position were more important than pure strength. Krav Maga had revealed that fighting on the ground, where strength mattered less, was a viable strategy. David, one of her fellow trainers, sat in the corner of her quarters. "Are you concerned about this fight?" he asked. "No," Lauren said. "Should I be?" "He is much larger than you. Stronger too, probably." "He is stronger," Lauren agreed. "But strength is not everything. He has spent his entire life in comfortable places. His body has been protected and enhanced by technology. He thinks fighting is something simple, something his genetics already solve for him. He has probably never learned that real fighting is about survival, not winning tournaments. And you have learned that?" Lauren smiled. "I was born on it." The next morning, both fighters prepared for the arena. Cale did some light stretching, his body already at peak condition from his genetic engineering and the relaxation pods. Lauren did serious preparation, her body needing to be fully engaged and ready for total effort. Neither of them knew it yet, but everything about their assumptions was about to change. The arena filled with spectators as word spread that a Valorian commander was about to fight a human trainer. Both species had questions. Valorians wanted to see proof of their natural superiority. Humans wanted to see if their fighter could really do what the rumors claimed. Cale entered first. He wore his dress uniform, a statement that this would not even require him to change clothes. Lauren entered second in simple training clothes, her body ready for complete effort. The arena fell silent. "Begin," said the referee, a neutral AI that judged both species fairly. Cale moved. Everything he had trained for, everything his genetics promised, came forward. He launched himself at Lauren with controlled aggression, expecting her to either flee or meet his force with her own hopeless force. Lauren did neither dodge. She moved to the side with perfect timing and let his momentum carry him past. For the first time in his life, Cale felt the shock of an opponent who was not where he expected her to be. The arena was large and circular, with clear padding on all sides. The ceiling was high enough to allow any species to move freely. Electronic barriers marked the fighting space, and seats rose in tiers around the edge. Every seat was filled. Cale entered from the north entrance. His body was all sharp angles and precise movement. He was nearly 8 feet tall, with skin that was pale gray and muscles that moved like machinery. His uniform was clean and unmarked, the dress clothes of someone who expected this to be barely worth mentioning. His eyes swept the crowd with confidence. Lauren entered from the south entrance. She was 5'8", with a solid build developed through years of real training. Her frame was compact and efficient. She wore simple gray training clothes that allowed full range of motion. Her eyes moved constantly, observing the arena, the barriers, the crowd, and finally Cale. They walked to the center of the arena. The crowd fell quiet. Humans on one side of the arena sat forward with hope. Valorians on the other side sat back with certainty. "We have a match between Commander Kale of the Valorian fleet and Trainer Lauren of the human colony," the announcer said. "Both competitors have agreed to standard rules. The match ends when one competitor yields, when they cannot continue, or when I determine the match is over. Are both competitors ready?" Kale nodded with obvious impatience. Lauren nodded with complete focus. "Begin," the announcer said. For a moment, nothing happened. Both fighters looked at each other from a distance of about 15 feet. Kale was assessing Lauren. What he saw was a small human female, clearly outmatched in every physical category. He had never understood why humans bothered to fight when they knew they could not win through strength. Lauren was assessing Kale. She watched his breathing, his muscle tension, the way he distributed his weight. She was looking for the moment he would commit to an attack. Kale decided there was no point in waiting. He moved. The Valorian did not run toward Lauren. He moved in a way that was faster than running, a controlled charge that translated his body weight into forward momentum. His stride covered the 15 feet in under 2 seconds. His hands came up in a combat stance designed to overpower any resistance. Lauren moved a quarter second before he arrived. She did not move backward or to the side in a direct line away from him. Instead, she moved at an angle, a diagonal path that took her across his line of attack. She turned her body as she moved, rotating her hips to present a minimal target. Kale's reaching arms passed through empty space. His body had committed to the charge, and although his reflexes were fast, they were not fast enough to change his direction mid-movement. He felt the shock of missing his target, and for the first time in a very long time, that shock was real surprise. He stopped and turned immediately. His training was excellent. He recovered from the missed attack faster than most species could react to it. But Lauren had not stopped moving. She was positioning herself at his side, using the moment after his first attack to improve her position. In Deathworld combat, position was everything. It was better to be in a good position with less power than to be in a bad position with more strength. Kale attacked again. This time, he did not attempt a simple charge. He threw a strike, a punch aimed at Lauren's head that carried enough force to break bones. The strike was precise and controlled, something he had practiced thousands of times. Lauren slipped the punch by moving her head 18 inches to the right. The strike passed so close she could hear the air move. She did not lean back. She did not try to block. She simply was not where the punch was going. As the punch passed, she moved back toward Kale's body. Her hands came up to his elbow and wrist. She did not try to match his strength. Instead, she used the momentum of his own strike to continue his movement in a direction he had not intended. Kale felt his arm moving in a way his muscles had not decided to move. It was uncomfortable, almost painful. His body tried to resist, to use strength to stop the motion, but strength was not the right tool for this problem. He found himself being turned, rotated slightly, his arms stretching in a way that made him want to pull back to safety. He did pull back. He had been trained to recognize when a position was becoming compromised, and he broke away from Lauren's control by moving forward into her space, using his strength to escape rather than his flexibility. Both fighters reset, moving apart again. Kale's breathing was still controlled, but something had changed in his expression. The certainty was still there, but now there was a thin line of focus underneath it. This was not going exactly as he had anticipated. The crowd reacted to what they had seen. Humans made sounds of excitement. Valorians remained silent, watching. No one expected the fight to last more than 30 seconds. 30 seconds had passed, and Lauren was still fighting effectively. Kale moved again, but this time he was more thoughtful. He did not simply attack with power. He attacked from multiple angles, forcing Lauren to respond to more than one threat at once. He threw strikes from his left and his right, then attempted a low kick. Lauren moved to each strike. Her movements were efficient, never wasted, never showing the tension that would indicate she was struggling. But the pressure was building. Kale was fast and smart, and he was learning as the fight went on. One of his strikes got closer than before. A kick aimed at her ribs nearly connected. She had to move more deliberately to avoid it. She was going to have to change her strategy soon. Simply moving and not attacking would eventually fail against an opponent who never got tired and kept improving. The announcer watched with interest. Humans were known for their adaptability. The question now was whether Lauren would adapt fast enough. Lauren made her decision. On Kale's next attack, instead of simply moving away, she committed to a response. When his strike came from the left, she blocked it with her forearm, absorbing the impact. It was not a perfect block. The force of his strike pushed through her defense and hit her upper arm. Pain flashed, sharp and immediate, but she was already moving. Using the moment of contact as her reference point, she moved inside his guard, getting close to his body where his strength was less useful. Her hands came up, and she grabbed his shoulders, pulling herself in tight against his chest. From this position, pure strength was not as valuable. She was too close for him to throw effective strikes. The leverage she could create was significant. She used it immediately, dropping her weight and attempting to turn him around and put him on the ground. Kale resisted with everything he had. His feet pushed hard against the arena floor. His core muscles locked. His strength was so great that he could force her to support his entire body weight through the attempted throw. But he was now off balance, and Lauren had his center of gravity. The crowd stood up. Humans shouted. This was real fighting now. This was not just movement and evasion. This was contact and struggle. Lauren sat in her quarters that night and opened the Valorian combat database. She had access to it through the station's resource library. Any information that was not classified could be studied by any station resident, and the Valorians had never bothered to classify their fighting techniques. They were confident that no one needed to know anything except that they were superior. She watched video after video of Valorian warriors in combat. The fighters moved with incredible speed and strength, but the patterns were always the same. They attacked from the dominant position. They used overwhelming force. They assumed that their opponent would either retreat or attempt to match their strength directly. Lauren made notes on a datapad. Valorian joints moved differently than human joints. Their hips were structured for forward momentum, not lateral movement. Their shoulders were built for power rather than flexibility. Their knees had less range of side-to-side motion. These were not weaknesses in most situations, but they were limitations. And limitations could be exploited. She watched one video where a Valorian fighter defeated a Cassian warrior. The Cassian was smaller and used sidestepping and rotation. The Valorian simply overpowered the technique by moving faster and harder. The Cassian fighter eventually tired and fell. It was a demonstration of Valorian strength, but Lauren saw something else. She saw a technique that could be countered if the opponent was willing to break conventional fighting patterns. David entered her quarters carrying water. He watched her review the recordings with serious attention. "You are really preparing for this," he said. Lauren nodded without looking away from the screen. He does not expect preparation. He expects to walk in and win because his genetics are superior. That is his vulnerability. Are you worried? David asked. No, Lauren said. Should I be? Most humans would be, David said. Going up against something that's strong. That fast. Lauren finally looked at him. Strength and speed are tools. But tools are only useful if you know how to use them. And they become dangerous when you are overconfident about what they can do. She turned back to the screen. Earth taught us something that the Valorians forgot. On our world, the strongest animal does not always win. The smartest one does. The one that understands the fight before it begins. She stood up and began to stretch. Her body moved through different positions, extending each muscle group fully. The routine was familiar, practiced thousands of times. But tonight it felt different. Tonight it was preparation for something that mattered. "Tell me about Earth," David said. He had never been there. Few humans left Earth anymore once they had access to space stations and colonies. Lauren stretched her legs, keeping her body loose and warm. Earth is hard. The sun is harsh. The gravity pulls you down every second. The weather changes without warning. And there are things that want to hurt you. Big things. Fast things. Things with claws and teeth. When you grow up there, you learn that being the biggest is not the same as being the smartest. You learn that speed does not matter if you are not moving in the right direction. You learn that strength is useful, but only if you are still alive to use it. And fighting? David asked. Humans have been fighting each other for thousands of years, Lauren said. We developed techniques because we had to survive against stronger animals. We learned to use joints and leverage because muscles alone were not enough. We learned that positioning was more important than power. These lessons are in our muscles now. They are in our instincts. David sat quietly for a moment. Do you think you can win? Yes, Lauren said. She said it without pride or doubt. Just fact. What will you do? David asked. I will move where he does not expect. I will use his strength against him. I will make him work for every inch of space. And when he gets tired, I will end it. Lauren continued stretching for another hour. Her routine was more thorough than usual. Every muscle needed to be flexible. Every joint needed to be ready. Her mind needed to be calm but sharp. Across the station, in the Valorian quarters, Kale spent his evening very differently. He sat in his private command center and reviewed data on human physiology. The information was interesting but not concerning. Humans had slower reaction times than Valorians. Their muscle density was lower. Their bones were less dense. Their cardiovascular system was less efficient. In almost every measurable way, the Valorian body was superior. Kale watched recordings of the best human fighters in the galaxy. They were impressive for humans, which meant they were adequate for a second-rate species. He saw them defeating other species in combat, but the opponents were always of lower genetic quality. No human had ever defeated a trained Valorian warrior. Not one. The historical records were clear on this point. He went to his relaxation pod and entered. The pod surrounded his body with perfect comfort. His muscles were already at peak condition. His reflexes were already the fastest in known space. His strength was already more than sufficient for any human. The pod maintained all of this while he rested in his dreams. Kale imagined the fight. He moved faster than Lauren could respond. He hit harder than she could endure. She fell in the first exchange. Everyone watching would see the truth. Valorians were naturally superior. Technology did not matter. Genetics was destiny. The night passed. Morning came. Lauren woke early and ate a full meal. Protein, carbohydrates, fat. Her body needed fuel for what was coming. She drank water and stretched again. Her mind was calm. The nervousness that some fighters felt before a match was not present in her. She had fought for survival her entire life. This was just another fight, except this time the only thing at risk was pride. Kale woke and exercised briefly. His body was already prepared. He did not need much. He showered in cool water, a preference of his species, and put on his dress uniform again. He would fight in his regular clothes. There was no need to prepare special equipment for a human. They both moved through the station toward the arena. Other beings noticed them. Valorians moved with the confidence of the naturally superior. Humans moved with the quiet focus of those who had learned that winning required complete attention. The arena was already beginning to fill. Word had spread throughout the entire station. A Valorian commander, a human fighter, the supposedly superior species against the supposedly soft species. Both sides wanted to see what would happen. Lauren stood in the preparation room and breathed slowly. Her body was ready. Her mind was ready. She had studied her opponent. She had trained for years. Whatever happened next, she would have done everything within her power to win. Cale stood in his own preparation room and felt nothing but certainty. He had trained for decades. His genetics were superior. His technology was better. There was no scenario where he lost. The only question was how quickly he would win. The arena doors opened. Both fighters entered. Cale used his strength to prevent the throw. His muscles locked, and he forced himself to remain upright despite Lauren's attempt to rotate him. But the effort cost him. He was no longer attacking. He was defending. The fight had shifted from his territory into something he did not understand. Lauren felt his resistance and immediately adapted. She did not try to force the throw. Instead, she shifted her grip and applied pressure to his shoulder joint, rotating his arm in a way that joints were not designed to rotate. The angle was not extreme, but the leverage was perfect. Pain shot through his shoulder. For the first time in his training, Cale made a sound. It was a grunt, involuntary, the sound of his body experiencing something it had never learned to manage. The crowd reacted. Valorians leaned forward. Humans cheered louder. Cale broke away from the position by doing the only thing that could work. He used his strength to lift his entire body weight against the joint pressure, reducing the angle of the lock by using pure power. It was not elegant, but it worked. He escaped the position and moved backward, putting distance between himself and Lauren again. This time, his breathing was different. It was still controlled, but there was an undertone of exertion. His shoulder was moving slightly differently, favoring that side less. Lauren had heard him. "I acknowledge the effectiveness of your training," Cale said. He was not being polite. He was being honest. His face showed that he was now taking this fight seriously in a way he had not before. "Good," Lauren said. Her voice was still steady, still calm. "Because this is going to get worse." The crowd fell silent again. Cale moved faster this time, but not randomly. He was trying different angles, different approaches, searching for something that would work against Lauren's techniques. He threw a strike, and when she moved to counter it, he adjusted his movement to catch her mid-counter. The strike was brilliant, actually. It would have worked against most opponents, but Lauren was a human raised on Earth. She had learned to fight from species with completely different anatomies than the Valorians. She had had access to thousands of years of human fighting knowledge. Some of that knowledge was specifically designed to counter the kind of structured, strong, fast fighters that dominated the galaxy. When Cale's strike came, she did not counter it in the way he expected. Instead, she let the strike graze her, using the friction to change her own direction. She moved with his force rather than against it, and as she moved, her hand came up and pressed a specific point on his throat, not hard enough to cut off his air, but hard enough to activate every pain receptor in that sensitive area. Cale gasped and pulled back, his hand coming up to his throat. The pain was sharp and intense, completely unexpected. Nothing in his training had prepared him for a strike that could cause pain without requiring significant force. Lauren pressed forward. She was finished with simple evasion and testing. She was finished with letting Cale learn. Now she was fighting to win completely and absolutely. The transformation was not in her movements, which were still efficient and controlled, but in her intent. The mercy was gone. Kale tried to regain his rhythm, but Lauren was everywhere he was not expecting. She struck at joints, at pressure points, at vulnerable areas that his body had never learned to protect properly. She was using the human knowledge that most advanced species had abandoned. Why waste time with pressure points when you could simply overpower an opponent through strength and speed? But Lauren was not wasting time. Each technique was working perfectly. A strike to his ribs made him double over. Kale was shocked that something so moderate in force could hurt so much. His ribs were stronger than human ribs. They should not be so vulnerable. A lock on his wrist made him understand that his arms, which he had always relied on for control, could be made to obey Lauren's will instead of his own. The lock was not even maximum effort on her part. If she wanted to, she could break his wrist. He knew this with absolute certainty. Kale had been trained his entire life. He had spent decades becoming a perfect warrior. But all his training had assumed that strength and speed would be sufficient. All his technique had been built around the assumption that if something did not work the first way, more power would work the second way. Lauren was teaching him that assumption was wrong. She swept his leg. With a technique that had been perfected by humans thousands of years, before space travel was even a dream. The sweep was not particularly powerful, but it was perfectly timed, perfectly angled, and perfectly executed. Kale's weight was already off balance from the previous lock on his wrist, and the sweep took his standing leg from under him. He fell. The impact of the arena floor was jarring. Kale hit hard because his body had not learned to fall safely. On his home world, gravity was stronger, and his people had different skeletal structure. More importantly, he had never fallen in a fight before. His training had never taught him how to absorb impact the way Lauren's people had learned. Kale tried to get up immediately. His body moved to stand, but his wrist responded incorrectly. It sent pain signals that made him hesitate. The hesitation was enough. Lauren was on him, using his own body position against him. She applied a joint lock to his arm, the kind that could not be escaped by strength alone. The lock was total and complete. If he tried to move, if he tried to break it with power, he would break his own bones. "I am done," Kale said. His voice was different now. There was no more certainty. There was only reality. Lauren held the lock for one more moment, then released him and stepped back. She did not offer him her hand immediately. She stood over him and let him understand what had happened. The crowd erupted. Humans screamed. Valorians sat in complete silence. Kale lay on the arena floor and felt something he had never felt before. Not pain, although there was certainly pain. He felt the complete reversal of everything he had believed about himself. He had entered this arena confident that his genetics and training made him superior. He was leaving it broken and humiliated. But more than that, he was leaving it curious. Because somewhere inside him, underneath the shock and pain, there was a question that burned. How did she learn to fight like that? Kale's arm would not stop hurting. The medical pod had done what it could, repairing the damage and managing the pain. But healing from injuries required time. More than that, healing required accepting that the injuries had happened. He sat in his quarters and reviewed the fight recording for the 100th time. The recording did not lie. He had lost. Not through luck or chance, but through systematic dismantling of every technique he knew. Lauren had been better at fighting than he was. It was that simple and that devastating. 3 days passed before Kale requested a meeting with Lauren. He did not demand it or use his rank to force it. He requested it politely, like an actual person asking for something, not a Valorian commander giving an order. Lauren agreed to meet him in the training bay. She was helping another student work on footwork when he arrived. She finished the lesson and dismissed the student, then turned to face Kale. "You want to know how to fight like that?" Lauren said. It was not a question. "Yes," Kale said. It was not even a pride issue anymore. His pride was already broken. This was something deeper. This was the desperate need to understand something he had been wrong about his entire life. Are you sure? Lauren asked. Because the answer is not going to make you feel better. I am sure, Cale said. Lauren led him to a quieter area of the training bay. They sat on the edge of a padded platform. On Earth, humans did not develop as the strongest species. We developed alongside predators that were bigger, faster, and stronger than us. We survived by being smart, by working together, by understanding how to use leverage instead of force, by learning that a small human could defeat a larger animal by understanding joints and pressure points. Instead of trying to match strength, Cale listened without interrupting. Every human fighting technique comes from that survival. Judo is not about throwing people through strength. It is about understanding momentum and using the opponent's energy against them. Jiu-jitsu is not about power. It is about position and leverage. Boxing, wrestling, everything comes from the knowledge that if you are smaller and weaker, you need to be smarter and faster. Not genetically faster. You need to be faster in your decisions. Lauren stood up and walked to the training equipment. She picked up a heavy bag and held it. When I hit this bag, I am not putting all my strength into it. I am using technique. The same technique that a human used to hunt animals twice as heavy as she was. The same technique that kept humans alive on a world that wanted us dead. Cale understood, but understanding and accepting were different things. But my genetics are superior. I am faster. I am stronger. Yes, Lauren said. And that makes you dangerous. But dangerous does not mean superior at fighting. Dangerous and skilled are not the same thing. A weapon with more firepower is not always more useful than a weapon with better aim. She paused. You wanted a real fight. You wanted to test your strength and genetics. I gave you something better. I gave you a lesson. Why did you accept the challenge? Cale asked. You knew I would underestimate you. You knew I would be arrogant. Because arrogance is dangerous, Lauren said. You and your people walk through the galaxy, assuming that your genetics make you superior. It would not take many fights like this for that assumption to be proven wrong. I thought it was better to show one Valorian the truth now, rather than let 1,000 Valorians learn it the hard way. Cale thought about this. He thought about the historical records, showing no Valorian had ever been defeated by a human. He thought about what would happen if humans started requesting fights. He thought about the damage to Valorian military doctrine if combat experience started showing that superior genetics did not guarantee superior fighting. I want to train with you, he said. I want to understand this. I want to learn. Lauren studied him. Most Valorians would want to hide what happened. You want to learn from it. I do not have a choice, Cale said. I know now what I did not know before. I cannot unknow it. I can only decide what to do with the knowledge. That afternoon, Lauren began teaching Cale. She showed him how to fall properly so that impact would not hurt so much. She showed him how to understand position instead of relying on strength. She showed him techniques that have been developed by humans over thousands of years. Cale was not a natural student at first. His body wanted to muscle through every problem. His instincts wanted to use strength where technique was needed. But he was a fast learner, and he understood now that learning was survival. Weeks passed. Cale began requesting a formal transfer to the human colony. The Valorian command asked questions. The colony was not normally where Valorian commanders requested transfer. Cale explained his reasoning simply. He had learned something important, and he needed to continue learning it. His commander approved the transfer. Curious about what had happened on the frontier station, 1 month after the fight, Cale and Lauren worked in the training arena. Kale was moving through a basic routine, his body still learning how to fight the way humans fought. He was slower than he had been, because he was focusing on technique instead of speed. He was less powerful, because he was not using raw strength, but he was learning. Lauren watched him and made corrections to his form. This was what teaching was. Not dismissing students as inferior. Not assuming that genetics was destiny, but taking someone and showing them what they did not know. "You are getting better," Lauren said. "Your wrist position is still wrong, but better." "How long will it take?" Kale asked. "To fight the way you fight?" "Years," Lauren said. "You are learning how to fight instead of how to overpower. That is a different skill. But you are learning." Kale practiced for another hour, and then they took a break. They sat again on the edge of the padded platform, just like they had after the fight. But this time Kale was not broken. He was not humbled by failure. He was simply someone learning something new. "Why did you defeat me so quickly?" he asked. "In the fight, you ended it fast." "Because I had to teach you something important," Lauren said. "You needed to understand that your assumptions were wrong. If the fight had been long, you might have convinced yourself that you had just had a bad day. That luck had been against you. By making it quick and decisive, I made sure you would have to accept what really happened. That a human, trained in Deathworld combat, could defeat a genetically superior Valorian." Kale nodded. He understood now. The fight had not been about winning. It had been about teaching. "When you go back to the Valorian fleet, what will you tell them?" Lauren asked. "The truth," Kale said. "That I was wrong about myself. That I was wrong about humans. That I learned more in one fight than I learned in 20 years of Valorian training." Lauren smiled. It was the same smile she had given when he first challenged her. The smile of someone who knew something others did not. "Good," she said, "because the galaxy needs to learn that lesson. One human at a time. One fight at a time." The training continued. Outside the arena, on a frontier station between human and Valorian space, something important was happening. A Valorian commander was learning that being strong was not the same as being powerful. That genetics was important, but not destiny. That sometimes the strongest thing a person could do was admit they had been wrong and learn from someone they had underestimated. Years later, when Kale returned to the Valorian fleet as a master of human combat, his people would begin to change how they understood fighting. They would begin to study techniques instead of just relying on genetics. They would begin to respect other species instead of dismissing them. But it all started in an arena when a Deathworld girl showed up. Valorian commander, how fast it all ends. When you do not understand what you are fighting against, it was the best fight of Kale's life, because it was the only fight that ever taught him anything that mattered.